Stephen Mackey, Brian Kendrick question. Konnan and Disco. What are your thoughts on Brian Kendrick being removed from AEW Dynamite? Personally thought it was a disgrace he got punished for the dumb and admittedly offensive remarks he made 10 years ago at a low-rent shoot interview while smoking weed. Brian Kendrick was a starving wrestler in the indie scene at the time and went down by the conspiracy theory rabbit hole and started watching too many David Icke videos. We've all been there when we start watching stuff on conspiracy theories. We start to think that everything goes on in the world is a conspiracy.
Right.
And do you guys know David Bixenspan? He's the nerd wrestling journalist who encouraged the pile-on of Brian Kendrick. Bixenspan also went after Cody for comments he supposedly made about wanting to wrestlers union and accused him of being disingenuous about it. I don't know. He got a fairly big following on Twitter, but people like Tony Khan, MJF, and Britt Baker follow the guy. I've noticed that a lot of these AEW wrestlers follow these so-called wrestling journalists and work them into believing that they actually care about them. I follow these guys too. I mean, if you're going to, I don't pay for news. Like, I don't get their Patrons. I don't get these guys' news sites or anything. I do follow them on Twitter because these are like the news guys on Twitter that report news. So if they do some news, I'll see it on my feed. You know. So, but definitely the Brian Kendrick thing, bro. It's just like, you know, what's there is no. What do you call it? What do you call when too many years have gone by and you can't get tried for something anymore?
Statute of limitations.
Statute of limitations. What is the statute of limitations for things like this? It's like we make up the rules as we go along.
Yeah, we haven't.
This stuff was a long time ago. The guy has been spoken about very positively since that time. He's did good stuff in 205 Live, and everybody was praising the guy. Then all of a sudden we bring up something he said 10 years ago, and all of a sudden everybody hates the guy. It's
Bro,
like whatever.
You can't, you can't pretend we're not living in a different era.
Right.
And so now you're held accountable for like that, whether we like it or not. Right. And so, okay, and I'm sure you've seen this because you watch a lot of news, that infamous clip of John Cena and Chinese apologizing to the Chinese. I wonder why he did that. All right. Yeah. So, okay. So, what did you expect for them to do? This is a progressive company, and that's what the fans expect from Tony. If he would have done anything else, he would have been crucified. So even if Tony agreed with you and me, and he might, he's cooler than you would think, but even if he agreed with us, he has an image to uphold or a brand to uphold or whatever you want to call it, and he had to do that.
Well, here's the thing. I think if you go back long enough, okay, and you take a lot of the things that people have done, a lot of things that people have said, all right, that at the time, if you would have said, hey, bro, maybe you shouldn't be saying this, you may get fired 10 years from now.
Right.
I think half the people would say, maybe you're right. Maybe I shouldn't. I think another half of the people would say, oh, come on, that's it. How are you going to get fired over this? So that's like we'll talk about when this was happening. That was the tenor of the moment. That's like the tone. Like people said stuff back then that they didn't think 10 to 15 years and 20 years later that you would get fired because of it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? If we would have known 10 to 15, 20 years later, you would get fired for things you were saying now, and you're like, bro, you'd kind of shit. It's like, bro, it is.
But
like,
how could you know? You can't tell the future. But you're living in the moment.
But the moment now is very censored. Yeah. Like we're living in a time of censorship where you can't. There's a lot of things you can't say. Right?
No,
it's
that's
like
my point.
But to sit there and criticize people that said it 10 before this new censorship thing, it's like, bro, I'm not for that. I don't think a lot of people should be for that. So,
me neither.
Plus, it was
Brian Kendrick should not be punished this severely for stuff he said that long ago.
And he apologized, but the apologies don't mean anything,
Apologies don't mean anything. That's brutal. You're getting punished and you can't apologize for it. So it's really a very narcissistic way to try to win arguments.
It's like somebody has a collection of people messing up and sits on it until they want to. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because that was 12 years ago, and Brian was with TNA at the time when this interview took place, and it's like someone sat on it until AEW was going to bring him on. And that's what it seems like.